Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Chill Film Discussions. Me and Austin here. So today we discussed a film called Snowpiercer. It was released in 2013. It's a sci-fi action film that's based on the French graphic novel Le Chespionnage by Jacques Blob. I'm probably
You
mispronouncing it.
butchered that.
I
You
completely,
butchered.
yeah, I butchered it. I'm sorry. For those of you who know French, I apologize. I don't know how to speak French. So anyway, going on. Yeah, the premise of this film is spoilers alert. It's about these basically, um, Earth itself frozen over. Humanity now all resides on a train. The train is split into different classes. So you got like those who are the most destitute and poor in the back of the train, and the ones who are like affluent and higher than socioeconomic class in the front of the train. Those in the back of the train are upset. They're like, "Wow, we've been eating, we've been living like crap. So we want to revolt and seek justice. Um, better living conditions and all and whatnot." Uh, and you know, throughout the film, we get to know like a couple, get to attach ourselves or get to know these characters. One of which is Chris Evans, who plays Curtis. He is the de facto leader, or I guess general, of this en garde who is trying to like overturn the system that is run by the antagonist of the film, Wilford, who is the conductor in the front of the train. Um, so essentially, yeah, this film is like what I really like about this film is the premise, the plot, almost also like the sort of the messaging, the theme behind it regarding like humanity and climate and socioeconomic classes and all that. Uh, as well as like revolution, violence, and all that. Like what's the greater good? Hard decisions as a leader. Um, yeah, I really enjoyed like I think the film really picked up halfway through when the bullets came out. Spoilers alert. People started getting gunned down by the so-called bullets that Curtis and company thought were gone, weren't around. And then it turns out that like as they're progressing through the train, now they have to worry about the people that they kind of bypassed in the beginning. The guards who they bypassed, now they have weapons, so they're going to be chasing Curtis and crew. So it becomes like almost like an added element of like tension, and it progresses the plot quite handily to the front of the train. Um, this is when not to make a really bad pun, but anyway, I'm going to make one. This is when I really got on board this train. As
You
myself
really like.
as a viewer, yeah, I really did like how the progression and how it sort of ended, um, with the sort of different plot devices, like whether or not you want that Curtis was become the villain, or whether or not how if the train was going to explode based on the claymore that Nam made, using the drugs. Uh, yeah, I kind of like that like dynamic of like, oh, what's how these elements of like uncertainty, like, oh yeah, how's it going to end and whatnot. Um, so yeah, I did enjoy the ending. I did enjoy the optimistic side of it, although despite the fact that the train was blown up and of course a lot of people died, life does exist outside. Life is starting to exist outside. People can kind of go around. Its temperatures are rising. There's hope. Um, the things I didn't like about this film, a couple of things. The main thing was the characters themselves. I mean, there were a couple characters I did care about. One of which, of course, was Chris Evans' character. I did care about Edgar, who was played by Jamie Bell. He kind of died halfway through the film for the greater good, I suppose.
Right.
Because,
Yep.
um,
Yep.
and then yeah, and the little girl who's clairvoyant, which by the way was not explained, and I kind of have some
Fiona.
gripe.
Yeah.
I have a little gripe with that because they're like, oh, she's clairvoyant. Cool. Okay, why? And then that was never explained. Um, but other than that, yeah, and like there are a couple of some characters I just didn't like. Their deaths didn't really. I didn't feel much for them. One of which, of course, is like Tanya, who played by Octavia Spencer. I kind of wish there was more behind that. Maybe if there was more screen time for her, or there was more relatability, or something, I would have cared more. But like there was a lot of death in this film. I perhaps was desensitized by it. Yeah, the characters themselves, with the exception of the main ones, I think, or like the ones that like had the most screen time, fell a bit flat for me.
Yeah.
So, uh, overall, I mean, I would give this film an 8. I think it was well executed, well done. I enjoyed the plot. It was a nice thriller. I would recommend it to anyone who is seeking action thriller and just an interesting premise, plot, you know, in general.
Yeah,
So that's my
no.
assessment.
Yeah, I kind of agreed with you, Patrick. A lot of things of what you said, right? The world was interesting and intriguing to me, as well as I think just the way that the story was being told. The story, going from the back of the train to the front of the train was unique. And also like a lot of the themes and messaging, about class that really got me engaged with this movie.
Mm.
Um, I really, not trying not to be repetitive, but I really like the action scenes from this movie. I thought they were, those really always exciting to watch, right? Especially, my favorite parts were, the battle, the clash between the Revolutionary Army or the lower class against, the kind of higher armed with all the axes of the trains army. That was really interesting. That first fight was really brutal, bloody. And I also enjoyed the fight when everything became blacked out, right? When they had the fire come through. That was also a very interesting fight. As I said before, I really liked the sniping scene where they have, Curtis and the
Yeah,
Terminator
yeah,
character was shooting each other.
sure.
That was also engaging.
Yeah.
And every time I think Gray, the martial artist, was on screen, fighting, that was very exciting. And I always enjoyed watching him. When he died, I was kind of sad, but no, again, I think they could have, probably give him more characterization, uh, kind of, delve deep into who he was for me to even be more sympathetic. Otherwise, it's just kind of like another death to move on from.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
I kind of like the commentary on leadership, right? Just in terms of like the weight of leadership, the role of leadership, has on a person, and what should be done for the greater good. And I like that kind of commentary. Like sometimes you have to you do some sacrifices, and it was just a very intriguing plot because I feel like sometimes people are not um, sympathetic, or they don't understand what leadership can do to a person and what choices that people have to make in order to do what is good for society.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I really was attached and engaged with the characters, as you said, like Curtis, Edgar, and Yona, but not really anyone else. And when you brought up, Yona's, clairvoyance and how it's explained, that kind of also got me thinking, yeah, you're right. I really felt that it would have been nice to have her powers explained because she was really much the only supernatural part, where everyone else was kind of grounded in like, oh, humanity. Like everyone acts and behaves just like regular humans in terms of like, there's no superpowers,
Mm-hmm.
except she's the only one who has it.
Yeah.
Um, I did have some, problems, and I think, just like small parts in terms of like, of how maybe events unfolded, but I think they're kind of minuscule. The biggest problem I had was the ending for the film and how that was tied up. I feel like they tried to make it an optimistic note, but like so many people died during the train, or the train was lost, derailed. I feel like there's so much. I feel like either they should have probably turned it up and not have an optimistic note at all,
Mm-hmm.
and show how humanity existed, or ended, or when they do the maybe have not so many people died. That's why it could be more optimistic, where people could be free from their oppression, and then live, and there's might be some greenery somewhere where life will go on. They're not still exposed. I mean, yeah, everything is melting, but everything is still cold. I feel like so. Didn't know how they would survive then. And again, I think my biggest gripe, and maybe it's just because the film ended on it. It was just there's a polar bear. I didn't understand why the polar bear was there, because all life was supposed to be gone and frozen. And yeah, I'm just gonna drop that. But yeah, that was one thing. But overall, um, I really enjoyed this movie. The characters, there's a lot of twists, right, that happened that kind of made me engaged. It's like, oh wow, can't believe that happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's some things that were different, just the way you expect it. Every time you think one thing's going, they throw a wrench that kind of made you kind of subvert what you were thinking, or kind of explain the movie in a different way. Yeah, with Gilliam's turn, right? That was one, or pretty much the biggest one, right? And that was very interesting, and just the way how they showed the world was exciting. And for me, the rating I would give it is also an 8, and I definitely would recommend this movie to anybody who wants to watch a science fiction thriller film, action film.
Well said. I agree too. Well, I guess that makes sense considering you both gave it the same rating. But cool. Well, with that said, that concludes our stream for this movie. Good movie. Would recommend from both of us. Although I don't know, we're not professionals, so yeah, take it with a grain of salt, I suppose. Um, yeah. So we'll be back next week at 11 a.m. Pacific time, and with a new movie. With that said, I mean, I hope whenever you watch this, if you watch this, I hope you have a great day.
Yeah.
All right, peace, everyone.
Bye.